My name is Jake Benavides.
My name is Aleah Zadunich.
And this is Critical Forum. So we are here on the beautiful University of Utah campus on a brisk November evening, and we're here to talk about some politics. Our first question of the day, of course, as you may be able to guess, is why are you majoring in political science, and what do you hope to do with it? Now, I am a political science major, but I'm also majoring in economics and psychology. What about you, Aleah?
Currently a political science major as well as a criminology major, but a Russian minor. So
Russian minor.
Yes.
Are you a Soviet spy?
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. What are you hoping to do with your combination of degrees?
You know, I'm not sure at the moment, figuring it out. My hope is something in intelligence or homeland security, something along those lines. So, how about yourself?
Oh, that is a question. I like politics and economics and psychology because...
Really?
I like the study of societies and the way that they form and the way that they develop and how humans in general have gotten to this point. I think it's really interesting. And I think humanity's a pretty crazy and beautiful thing at the same time. But I hope to influence society as a whole. I don't know if that's through high-level government, through policy, or if it's through education, but I'll probably end up in government or academia. Definitely one of those two.
Do you have which one? Do you have a preferred choice for that?
Well, the issue with that question is I don't know which one is easier to
influence.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you're okay with whatever as long as you're having a meaningful impact on society?
Well, I don't know about okay with whatever, because there are certain things that I probably would and would not enjoy. Like, I'm sure there's parts of government that I would hate being in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's times in academia that I wouldn't be too happy about. But the societal impact is definitely the number one priority for sure.
Gotcha. There you go. Okay, so yeah, we're both political science majors at the U in one form or another. What do you think is the best political science class, or class in general, that you've taken so far here?
Yeah, I have not taken the classes that I'm really excited about yet. I used to be a computer engineering major, and I switched over, so I'm not really sure, I'm not really that far into everything that I want to explore yet. However, from the political science department, some of the most interesting classes that I've taken were Intro to Political Theory. That's a very basic class that every political science major has to take, but it was a pretty good dive into a lot of the different topics that I hope to cover eventually. My goal within the political science degree is to focus in political theory and political thought. So
gotcha. Yeah, so this is where we differ. I am less on the theory side of things for sure. Political theory is one I've not taken yet, and I'm not super stoked for it. But yeah, so you're wanting to take more higher level political theory classes, yeah?
Yes, yeah, gotcha. Absolutely.
Nice.
Do you have a favorite class yet?
So we actually met in international relations, Intro to IR, which was one of my favorite classes I've taken for sure. And I'm in advanced foreign policy right now, which is probably one of my favorites I've taken.
Okay.
So I'm more on the foreign policy and security route, so anything with foreign policy, defense, that's really where I'm excited. So I'm taking Foundations of International Defense next semester, so I'm excited for that. And just, learning, for me, I like less of the theory and more of the, like, this is how we're putting things into use today, if that makes sense. I like seeing the concrete examples of how we're doing things.
Okay.
So, and I think they both have their merits to them. So, yeah.
So, with that in mind, how would you describe your political philosophy or leanings?
Honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it's also worth noting, how far are you in school? I know you're farther than I am.
In terms of political science, I'm a third year-ish, but I've been here for 4 years now because I was doing the engineering
computer
first.
engineering. Gotcha. Yeah. So I just started my sophomore year, so I'm still kind of finding my footing as far as political leanings. From like typical American political terminology, I would not consider myself neither a Republican nor a Democrat, which is kind of a cop-out answer for today, but I lean more right-wing on some certain issues that I'm sure we'll get into. I like to say that institutionally I'm a Republican and socially I am more of a Democrat, if that makes sense. So, how about you? How would you? You've got some bigger words here.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, as someone who's focused in the political theory realm and political thought in general, I've definitely leaned into the philosophy and that side of politics a lot more as well. So, I am pretty. What's the word? I am influenced by a lot of Marxist thought and Marxist principle, but in a modern sense. I think that there are certain power structures that need to be
dismantled,
put in check, I'll say. But I also have blended nihilism and humanism for my own personal philosophy as well.
Yeah.
I think that I have an issue with society structures in general, but
right. Well, this is where I think it'll get interesting, because you're trying to almost, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you're almost working to kind of reshape the system that we live in, and I am working with inside of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think that's where our perspectives are going to be interesting.
I think that is a good way to describe it. The thing is I think that human behavior in general relies on structure, and so depending on how power structures are set up, it can really benefit humans, but it can also be very dangerous for humans as well. So determining the best kinds of structures is the best way to move forward for humanity. Which is why I think like studying politics and studying psychology and economics is really important, and why I have devoted so much time to it now.
Absolutely. And it's very relevant today too, especially. Like, it still blows my mind that there are people who just choose ignorance and choose not to know anything about, the political climate that we're in, and just anything in that realm. So
yeah, I mean, like, I somewhat disagree. I also somewhat agree, but I think that ignorance for a lot of people is less
bliss.
It's less of a choice and more of a so yeah, I guess bliss is a way to describe it.
I think it could be both. I know a lot of people who actively choose to just completely block out any kind of news, any kind of political understanding.
Yeah, and people will say that, and a lot of people do say that, but when you ask why, when you get into like the deeper why of people, the reason why people behave, they often talk about how it's stressful, they don't see how it affects them, they're too busy working, they have to go make money, and these issues, I think, are exacerbated by the use of capitalism in our system, simply because it makes people focus on the immediate material conditions that they are living under, when civic duty and philosophy and these civic ideas are less profitable and more larger scale. So you have to have time, you have to have the resources, you have to have the privilege to be able to think about them at a deeper level. And when you're busy working your minimum wage 9-to-5 job, it makes it a little harder.
Well, and society structures it so that it's harder to actually have an understanding as far as, or a deeper understanding than most people are used to.
Absolutely. So. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. Even though I love democracy so much, it's such a great concept, but one of the biggest issues that it exists under is that people who are uneducated are able to vote and have a say, and that say is important, but they're also severely uneducated. They don't understand how economics works. They just know how they feel about the impact of economics,
right.
but then they claim to be capitalist.
Or are only getting one side of the equation.
Right.
Which, I'm sure we'll get into recently, but I feel that way when I hear people say, oh, I voted for Trump for the economy.
Right.
Right. If there was a little bit more education there and knowledge of how the economy works and the fact that we pay for tariffs.
I mean, even basic levels of economic understanding would be better. In one of my econ classes that I had recently, we were talking about tariffs, and we went over the equation for how tariffs work, and the rate at which we tax people will directly affect the income that we bring in. That's just how it works. And the idea is that when you decrease imports, your exports get bigger. right? And then that increases your GDP. The issue with that is one, most basic models don't account for the price level under higher tariff rates, and two, it doesn't account for the effect on the like overall economy that it has. So like if you're bringing in imports, it's not necessarily going to or decrease prices or necessarily bring manufacturing to the U.S. because it's so nuanced and there's so many moving pieces to it that just increasing tariffs does not immediately make GDP bigger or income bigger. That's just not how it works, and people don't understand that. And there's also this idea that like China will somehow pay for most of the tariffs, which is a ridiculous statement. That's just not possible. You pay for the goods at the port of entry, and so when they come to America, that's when you pay for them to pick them up. So it's just not possible for China to pay the tariffs. It makes no sense.
Right. Okay, well, I want to take a step back from this a little bit for a minute, just since this is kind of our first episode here. Are there any podcasts that you listen to frequently, politically related or not?
I do listen to Economic Update with Richard Wolff. He is a Marxist, a pretty popular one, and I also listen to Freakonomics quite a bit as well as more of a laugh.
There you go. Yeah, you go balance it out.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What about you?
I'm trying to listen to more right now and broaden it. I'm a really big fan of Julian Dory. I don't know. Did anyone here? Yeah?
No.
No, Connor's like, no. Julian Dory does a lot of, like, story-based. He has on a lot of people that have had a lot of experiences, but they're all foreign policy or, like, military-related. So they get into a lot of history, especially in Middle Eastern and Asia and that kind of a place. They get into a lot of history there, but through it doesn't feel like you're sitting in a lecture, if that makes sense. It's through people. Nice. There you go. Julian Dory, my man. And I try to listen to Morning Brew Daily every day because I try and do that to get my news in because they balance it out pretty well.
I get so many ads
for Morning Brew.
For Morning Brew, it's crazy.
They're honestly great. Toby and Neil, they're great. And they give you like bite-sized news in a way that's so digestible when you're listening to it at 7 a.m. And they're great. There's also one that I was recommended recently. I think I gotta fact check this, but I think it was called like the President's Daily Brief, right? Where they give you like, fact check me, God. They give you like all of the foreign policy or just policy in general, like all the government related political updates in like a 10-minute session. But the one time I tried to listen to it, President's Daily Brief, it was very like you had to understand a lot of political lingo to get through it, and I think I just want to emphasize here, one of our main goals with this podcast is to make it accessible and for everyone. We want to make this a space that anyone with any view, any idea, any opinion can come and talk and chat and just be open about the way they see the world and have a place to talk about it, but also make sure that, people who aren't political science majors who are interested in learning more about the way that we see the world are able to do so in a way that, isn't going to cause you to have a stroke. So we're trying to make this, make it happen.
Yeah, that question is always so relevant, especially now, about, how do you have, civil political discourse when people disagree so much, and it's...
Welcome to Critical Forum.
It's such an interesting question because there's always the side of people that are like, I don't have to get along with other people. Like, I don't need to have civic or, like, pleasant discourse with people I don't agree with. And, at some level, I feel like everyone agrees with that. The issue is like, we have to take the higher road, I feel like often. And that has limits to itself as well. I would never ask someone who holds a specific identity to try and have a civil conversation with someone who wants to eradicate their identity. That's a ridiculous ask, but others, I think, do have to engage in that way. And so I guess with that in mind, how do you personally navigate disagreement?
I mean, honestly, I really am trying to get better at it, for sure, and I think that's going to be a big part of this podcast. I think we're all going to learn from it, but, I mean, I really just try and kind of, I know this is going to sound probably pretty typical, but put myself in the other person's shoes, right? Obviously, try and see where they're coming from, and especially the experiences that people have lived, right? I think how you see the world very much comes from how you were raised and the experiences that you've lived previously.
Yeah.
And so I kind of try and pull from that. And, you know, henceforth it can kind of sometimes seem like I'm interrogating people for talking about something. I'm like, tell me about your childhood. And they're like, why? I'm like, listen, there's a lot behind it. And I'm sure psychology triple major over here, you can agree with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's kind of my take on it. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely understanding people's personal backgrounds is extremely important to understanding their behavior now. I definitely take a much more of a academic approach to it. There's this fantastic book, The Socratic Method.
Yes.
And it talks about how to have that sort of conversation. It also talks about teaching in general. Mm-hmm. But it's really important to, I think, in a debate or even just a friendly conversation, in a conversation with someone, to get them to explain their point of view. So I'm always asking why, trying to get them to explain their view, and hope that we can move down their thought process until we get to like the solid foundation,
the base level, yeah.
The base of what they believe and why they believe it, and then that's when you start. Attack is the wrong word, but that's when you start
almost dissecting it a little bit.
Dissecting and like introducing new objections or different
Ideas.
Perspectives to the base instead of trying to fight on the surface level.
Right. How do you feel about the idea that people who are more educated on a certain subject are easier to kind of have that discussion? Because I've kind of talked to a lot of people recently who are very, you know, strongly opinionated on something, but yet haven't done enough research on it to have that debate. Like, there's a lot of people nowadays that have an idea one way and are completely not even willing to have the discussion that there might be anything else because they haven't even looked at it.
Yeah, I get what you're getting at, and I somewhat agree, but I don't think it's specifically about education, because I think there are educated people who are
like
the same way.
Research, you know.
It really comes down to how you approach the person, I feel like. Because in my mind, as someone who's been doing political engagement for a while now, I think it's really important, and it's on me, it's my job to get to them. Mm-hmm. I can't expect them to come to me. So if they're hostile at first, I have to break through the defense. If they're acceptable at first or open to it, then it's easier for me. But the responsibility is on me as the debater, I guess, or just as me as a person, because I'm trying to change their mind.
You don't think that could be seen as badgering?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define it, right?
Well, if you're saying, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but if you're saying, no, I have to be the one that's initiating this with this person, you don't think that someone else could take that as, you know, leave me alone?
I guess initiating is not what I mean. If we're engaging in a conversation, right, and you're still defensive about your position, it's still my job to try and break through the defense. I'm not necessarily following people around being like, argue with me. That's not what I'm doing.
That's what he wants you to think.
I wish I had the bravery to do that.
No, I think that'll make for an interesting some interesting guest conversations for sure. I think we definitely have different ways of going about different issues. We have a couple other questions here. Yeah, what kind of guests or topics are you hoping to have people on, segue into that?
I want to take the opportunity with this platform to just engage in as much conversation as possible. I'm not an expert by any means on anything, even the stuff that I'm the most passionate about, and getting more conversation is the greatest gift that we can get, I think. I think a large portion of what I want to do here is hearing from a bunch of different perspectives, not just in terms of ideology, but in terms of status and place in life. I would love to get professors, other students, random people off the street, experts, authors, anyone that wants to come and talk and engage in a dialogue that is productive and useful, I think is hopefully what we can achieve with this platform.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. I think especially students here, absolutely, people that come from all walks of life, anyone's welcome, anyone, like I said, any opinion. And experts, people that have previous experience in any form of politics, I think is very valuable.
Yeah.
So please, if you're interested, hit us up. We would love to chat. Are there any current issues or debates that you are really passionate about at the moment?
With the recent election, the implosion of the Democratic Party has been rather fun to watch. As someone who sat on the left of the Democratic Party since, I don't know, 2016, when they absolutely stole Bernie's slot, I've kind of had my anger with the Democratic Party. So it'll be interesting to see if the Labor Party rises from this, or if the Democrats pull their shit together.
Yeah, doubtful. We'll see.
We'll see. I hope that the Labor Party pulls it out. But we're
really gonna need some strong figures to come out, because currently we have nobody. We lost Kamala. I say we. No, I got you.
And Bernie's too old to be the leader of the Labor Party, so
I don't. Bernie.
Exactly. That's why he's perfect for the Labor Party.
Here we go. No, this is fun. Jake is a big Bernie fan, clearly.
In terms of American politics, he's the best that we got right now.
That's a statement.
I'm more considerably left than Bernie is, in my heart at least. In terms of American politics, he's the best that we got on this on the primary stage.
Connor, you're biased.
but in more broader terms, obviously being someone who is economically far left, I care a lot about economic instability and things in that nature. Yeah. I think that economic structures play a vital role in how society forms, and the current economic structures are not set up in the best way. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that it's really dire that we address inequality. Yeah. I also have recently tried to reform the way that I think about economic systems in terms of the way that we define them. So when you look at capitalism and the way it's defined, and it's the control of resources and capital and this sort of thing, when you look at it in an American context, it's not necessarily exactly how it's defined. And I feel like people are misguided in the way that they go about defining things, because a lot of people normatively will say that they like entrepreneurs and they want the economy to be flowing, and they want lots of innovation and invention and all these things, and then are I like capitalism because I want people to be able to concentrate capital. And I'm like, well, if you want entrepreneurs, you can't have 4 companies concentrating capital.
You don't think that those entrepreneurs could just be seen as rising competitors? Well, isn't that how businesses start that accumulate capital? Is technically they all started by being entrepreneurs?
Yes, but the issue is when you look at certain companies, mm-hmm. like Walmart, for example, they're not making anything new. They're not doing anything special. They just are there.
They're just doing it better than everyone else.
Well, they're not necessarily doing it better. Have you been to a Walmart recently?
That
place is full of...
Oh, I know.
It's not good.
Not necessarily. When I mean better, they've figured out how to make more capital. That's what I mean by better than their competitors. Is they have somehow figured out a way. We should have some people from the business school on here. Let's do that.
I absolutely agree.
Right? Yeah. No, but when I say better, I mean they've figured out a way to quote unquote beat the system and
right. But what they did that was better was just concentrate capital, and then they don't
but that still was better. That still was better for them. Well, that's what I mean by
right. That might be true, but when we're talking about in terms of developing the economy, one person holding all the capital does not benefit the economy.
Elon Musk.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I got you.
Right. So timing. So if we want entrepreneurs, then the best way to do it is to give people the resources to survive, mm-hmm. and an education to unlock their intellectual and their creative minds. Mm-hmm. We don't do that properly, and we don't have to get rid of profit or commerce or even the way that people want to define capitalism or consumerism, but we need to be better at organizing the way that people access the resources.
Okay, I can understand that. We have some differing views, but I can get behind that.
What about you? Is there anything specific?
Oh, any current issues right now?
Yeah.
I mean, you know where I'm going to take this.
Yes.
I am definitely really invested in the war in Gaza right now, Israel and Palestine, and everyone else and their mother that's getting pulled into that. So that's something that I think we'll have an episode dedicated to, whether it's just us or with some other people, depending on obviously how long this conflict goes on to. I think it would be interesting to have us and then maybe 2 other people, depending on how we can facilitate that of one person from each side. And I would also really love to find people that have real experiences or ties to both sides of that debate, because I would love to talk to people over there. And yeah, I mean, obviously the election was definitely something that we watched the election together. That was a fun one. We had a little watch party with a couple people, and that was definitely something that I took to heart, especially because I know we were talking about earlier about what we want to do with political science major. I know for a fact that within the next 4 to 5 years, I will most likely be working in DC directly in politics, or at least very, very adjacent to it. So I was definitely like, it was kind of a wake-up call for me of like, oh, whoever gets elected, this could actually really affect my future, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I just turned 20. I just voted in my first presidential election, and
that was your first?
It was my first presidential election. Yeah, I'm 20.
I guess
I voted in obviously other smaller elections when I turned 18. But yeah, it was just crazy for me to be like, wait, this is actually gonna affect my life. And the Trump presidency is gonna be interesting. I would also really like to do, if you're down, an episode diving into his past foreign policy. I have kind of read over extensively his previous foreign policy, I forget what they call it. I was just looking at this the other day. His fact check me here. The brief that a president puts out, his foreign policy initiative saying this is what I want to do. Trump's was called the America First. I'd like to look at that again, and then possibly look at how his tactics are going to affect foreign policy now.
Yeah. The archives.
What's it called?
The archives.
You know what? I might pull this up, or at least have it ready for next time.
Yeah.
It's literally called it's what a president or an administration puts out when they come into office, saying this is our foreign policy prerogative. This is how we're treating foreign affairs, and it details things. So I think that would be interesting to look at for sure.
I gotta be a better Jamie here.
Yeah, Alessi.
With that in mind, this is actually kind of
good segue.
Going back a little bit, actually.
Okay.
Is there any specific political issues or theory or anything like that you have recently, or even just over time, developed or changed your mind on?
That's a good one. Have you? Give me a minute to think, because I know there's something.
I have, yes. So I've always been a pretty big government guy, and I still am. However, I have come to appreciate what a private market can do. I just think it needs to be significantly regulated. But there are definitely values and things that you can get out of having private markets. Resource allocation can be done better on paper in a private market. The issue that I always have with certain decentralization and deregulation is that the traditional narrative of decentralization is that it will increase equality or increase freedom, and I think that's at best short-sighted view of decentralization, because without proper regulation, decentralization just opens the playing field for someone else to consolidate power.
Okay. Do you want to maybe illustrate that a little bit more in some simpler terms, if you can?
Yeah. If we have a completely free market, and right. When I say free market, I don't mean the
everything's free
of the yeah. I just mean if corporations or private entities, so to speak, are able to go out and purchase or do whatever they want whenever they want, that doesn't necessarily guarantee anyone else is more or less free. All it guarantees is that somebody can consolidate power, can buy all the food if they want to. That's not necessarily more free.
Well, and it could also probably be seen as more dangerous to society.
Exactly.
Right, if in the wrong hands, especially in the world we're living in today.
Right.
I gotcha.
And so, I understand the fears of a centralized government. I just think that the same fears exist in a privatized government when corporate entities have no check on them.
I was going to say checks and balances is where my brain goes for that.
And exactly.
Which is terrifying right now because we just got...
checks and balances is a fantastic way to word it and put it, because even economic policies and economic systems can have checks and balances, and I think that America has done a poor job of putting in checks and balances on the economy. That's one of the biggest issues that we have. Yeah.
I'm definitely not an economist at all. I really should learn more about the economy, and this will probably spur me to do that. But yeah, no, checks and balances is definitely a big one. Off of checks and balances, how do you feel about the fact that we, alongside President Trump getting reelected, we now have Republican Senate and House?
Yeah.
barely red. I think it was, how many votes was it read by? Both of them? But it was close. It was tight.
I think the House is 50 something.
Yeah, they're still red. We were talking about this earlier in my foreign policy class, but it's an interesting thing. Yeah. Oh.
Looks like it's 47 Dem, 53 GOP.
Connor's got it.
Including the independents that caucus with the Dems.
Yeah.
No, it's close. It's.
Yeah, it's scary that they have a complete majority in every aspect, including the Supreme Court, which is jam-packed full of conservative judges. So that's going to be so much fun.
Well, and I'm just so. I mean, I really am interested too in the staff picks that Trump is picking. I was going to say, I mean, this could be a whole nother episode, but I just, what a time to be alive, man. I'm just this is, I can't understand half of this, and I truly, what the fuck?
The Fox News host who
yes.
allegedly doesn't believe in germs. I don't even know.
Dude, put Laura Ingraham in there at this point. I can't.
Or the alleged Russian propagandist who used to be a Democrat. What's her name?
What?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah. No. I sorry. I was going somewhere with this. Okay. Checks and balances. I am just so worried because last time Trump was in power, right? He started out his presidency.
Tulsi Gabbard. That's her name. Is going to be the director of national intelligence. What?
Dude. I mean, okay, Fox News guy, we were saying this before we started recording. Fox News guy, forget his name. Connor, insert name. Ben something. Secretary of Defense is a Fox News anchor.
Yeah, and he apparently doesn't believe in germs either. I saw an article. I don't know.
I can't. Well, so here's my thing with that. When Trump was first in office, right?
Pete Hegseth?
What did I say, Ben? Pete Hegseth. I was way off. So sorry. When Trump was first in office, there was actually a decent amount of people that had their head on straight, right? There was a decent amount of people that said, hey, what the actual fuck are you doing, right? The problem is that this time around, he has made it so there's nobody disagreeing with him. There is nobody questioning his power. There is nobody questioning his decisions. Yeah. They are all just insane fit his policies. And I mean, I wanted to look up the statistics for this. How many people did Donald Trump fire his first time in office? Because it was high. It was high. And I just can't understand how we have a president who refuses to acknowledge any other opinions. Any other opinions are just completely shut down with not even ignorance, but with bro is just fucking mean. He won't even listen. And I can't. You need a devil's advocate in the Situation Room. You just do, and he has nobody.
Yeah, it's
everyone is just sucking his dick. Can I say that?
It's scary because he's definitely a narcissist, and so he thinks that every idea he has is great, even if they are absolutely garbage. But yeah, there's not going to be anyone to check him, and it's anyone. There's not going to be anyone with the ability to say something inside of his government at
Google
all.
already knows. Tracking turnover in the first Trump administration. Let me see what
I've been
this
looking for it.
Looking for it. President Trump's A-team turnover is 92%. This is on brookings.edu.
As of January 20th, 2021, that's crazy.
What? Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about
See,
it.
yeah, this is crazy. I was hoping he was gonna pick Marco Rubio for something. Yeah, listen, because at least he's got his head on better than Fox News guy. I'm just gonna keep calling him that. I know we determined his name, but I don't care. No, that's crazy. Back to what you were saying about, have you changed your mind on any political
Yes.
situations here? I definitely, the border was something that I know we disagree on, and my perspective on that definitely changed.
Since disagreeing with me or before?
No, before, unfortunately. So sorry. He was like, wait, no. I've definitely leaned more towards, I think that we do need to shut the border. I don't think we need to, build the wall, per se. I think that's a bit extreme. But I absolutely don't think that our border should be wide open. And that's one thing that I voted for Kamala Harris. I will very proudly say that. But I was really not a fan of her border stance, simply because they weren't going to do much about it. But I will say, I have talked to a lot of people who were like, oh, I voted for Donald Trump for two reasons, the economy and the border. And I do want to bring up I think it was a bill that was trying to be passed by the Democrats. It was like the most, it was like an across the aisle situation, right? Yeah. And it was the most reformative border control bill that was trying to be passed.
Yeah.
And on Donald Trump's orders, the Republican Party stopped it because he did not want any kind of Democrat taking credit for that bill. I do want to look at that bill because I haven't looked at it in depth. I don't know if we can find it, but I believe that the border should be shut at the very least. I do think that we need to seriously reform how we let people into this country. I don't think that we should just shut it and forget about it. I think that we need to take a better look at how hard it is for people to get citizenship, because it is ridiculously hard. But I also do not think that you should just be able to walk into this country and stay here and live here. I don't think that we should be doing what Trump is doing, which is rounding up all the immigrants and shipping them off, to put it frank. But
it's going to destroy the economy.
Right, literally. And it's also just cruel. And my heart breaks for all of the families that are going to be separated by his presidency. That really is not okay. But I do still think that we should shut the borders, absolutely.
It's funny. The border argument I find to be...
Oh, H.R. 2. Thank you, Connor. H.R. 2 is the bill that we're talking about, which was a across the aisle bipartisan bill that was attempted to be passed back in 23, 24. It was last year, 23.
I think so.
Yeah.
But the border conversation is always one that I find really funny, because there's in my view, there's three people, there's three positions to have, three mainstream positions. There's the isolationist type, which is like Donald Trump, who want to shut the border and kick everyone out who's not American, which is not American in the way it's founded. I was going to say American. Because America is founded with immigrants. Everything that's been built in this country was built on the backs of immigrants. I mean, they literally did not originate here. Mm-hmm. They're from Europe.
All of us.
So there is no such thing as a non-immigrant identity. Then there's the people like you who just want to close the border and reform it to make it easier to get across. And then there's people who say they want an open
wide
border.
Open. And where do you fall on that?
Well, the funny thing is technically I think that
wide open.
Arbitrary bounds around pieces of land is a really stupid way to organize. But if we
just cut up all the U.S.
If we reform the way that the border works and how people get across the country, and it's a closed border technically, but people are able to get across easily, then it's still technically an open border. Because the issue that surrounds an open border is knowing who's in the country and the resources that are necessary to allocate towards them. That's the real issue with having an open border. It has nothing to do with crime, because illegal immigrants cause less crime than natural-born citizens. Has nothing to do with taking jobs, because the jobs that illegal immigrants are taking are
jobs that
jobs that
people that
Americans
are from here don't want.
It has a only positive effect on the economy, because it lowers the prices of everything. Because if Americans were doing the jobs, you would have to pay them, minimum wage, which is significantly more than what they're paying illegal immigrants. And so, like, that issue is specifically related to, and I say this about everything,
the
but
economy.
that is related to the economy and capitalism.
Economy.
So, like, the open border question is only a question when we're relying on labor like that. But
if we weren't relying on labor, I'm just curious, in a hypothetical world, would you still have the same position?
Yes, because I'm a humanist and a social anarchist, I guess. I don't.
Yeah.
I think that, like, borders and all that is just a way to separate people, and that's not what we need to be doing. We need to.
So what do you think about my argument here, which is a lot? I mean, I've got a few, but one of the main arguments here is that a lot of countries that are incredibly prosperous and incredibly safe, just with data and just with everything that we've looked at, are countries that have closed borders. The United States is one of the only countries that you can just walk right into. And I'm trying to go into security and defense. To me, that is like a huge problem. Like, the amount of security threats that can come from having an open border, to me, and I'm not debating your statistic that you threw out of the fact that immigrants cause less crime. I absolutely think that that's true, and I think that there's merit behind that, but I'm not even talking about, like, causing crime. I'm talking about, like, direct threats to homeland security. The fact that we have so few checks right now of people that can stay here is scary.
Yeah, so I think that a homogenous culture tends to be safer because there's less cultural friction. And I think that is what leads to.
I'm not saying that we need a homogenous culture. I'm saying that
I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. Just your original argument was that the cultures or countries that you see doing really well all have closed borders. Mm-hmm. They're also European countries usually, and they're more homogenous.
I mean, Canada.
Canada's also a little different in terms of the way that they organize everything.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we can look at all of them.
But
yes, I do see your point as far as homogenous culture.
The way I look at it, the way I view it, from my own bias maybe, is people behave in ways that the system forces them to behave in. And so when you have structures in place, that are in place are the reason why people act out, or that are security threats.
So you think that terrorists are terrorists because of a system?
Yes. And you have to look at it at a global scale. I understand
why that's your argument, but I also think that there is... I mean, it depends how you define the system, right? If you're talking about the system that, someone grew up in, that is instilling these beliefs of, pretty relevant right now, of, death to America, right? If you're saying that system instilled, I think there is a component of that, but I also think there is a component of personal initiative and personal responsibility. You might grow up in a system that teaches you that, but that doesn't mean that you have to come over to America and live here as a terrorist, or some kind of security threat. You know what I'm saying?
That's the thing, though.
I'm putting this terribly, but
that's kind of my point. Like, a lot of people have those kinds of arguments where they're saying things like, like there's a personal initiative or personal responsibility.
Well, there is.
But the only personal responsibility you can have, it comes from a normative existence. So you can only...
We all have a personal prerogative.
Right, but that can
But
that can only come from things that you know. You can't act on things that you don't know. And that is true for entirety of existence. If you don't know anything good about America, then you won't know that America has good things.
Right. Okay. Then here's my question to you, right? Sure, that might be true. If we table that for a minute, right, how do you suggest that we deal with that? If the system, right, that someone, I need a good example here. If someone is growing up in the Middle East, in a country that, is certainly not America, is certainly not if they're growing up in an environment that is facilitating those thoughts and those prerogatives, right, we still can't do much about that. I mean, yes, sure, hypothetically, we could go over there and do what we've tried to do and promote democracy and wipe out an entire system of government and put our government in place, but that's still not guaranteeing anything. But we're not trying to do that right now. If we look at right now what we are doing, we're defending our territory. We're defending our country. We're not going over there and trying to do the impossible because it wouldn't work anyways. So why should we bank on the fact that other people are going to change their systems, because they're not, instead of just doing what we can do to defend our citizens and our territory? Because I understand what you're saying, but I'm also I consider myself to be quote unquote a realist, right? Realistically, we are not changing other people's ideas. We are not changing systems overseas. What we can do and what is in our hands is the safety and security of Americans on our soil. And if the only way to do that, or the best way to do that, is to not let people cross the border without the correct paperwork and identification, then that's what we got to do.
Yeah. So I mostly agree. I actually do think that we can change systems overseas. It's just incredibly taxing.
Well, and is that what you want our tax dollars to be spent on?
Well, I also, as a Marxist, don't believe money's real. So.
Oh my god.
So.
Okay, well, so we do live in a world where money is real.
Well, no. My point is, it's money, especially in the American sense, is completely arbitrary. There is nothing backing the American dollar except that the American government says that it's worth something, and then you have massive corporations profiting off of wars in other countries because they sell and buy weapons to both sides.
Okay, back to Homeland Security.
Well, that has everything to do with Homeland Security. A lot of the war that we see and instability that we see in developing nations and the world outside of America comes from resource instability. They don't have the type of money that America has. They don't have the type of resources that America has. And then America is over here trying to spread democracy in their systems while also taking their oil and taking out entire city blocks with bombs.
Well, and I can
from
understand,
drones.
obviously, how that's easy to look at and say, okay, fuck you, America.
Exactly.
But what I'm saying is even if we, I don't know, loaded up an aircraft and dropped it down and just gave everybody money.
It's not about money. It's about economic development. You have to go into these countries and you have to give them food and you have to build them homes and you have to eradicate poverty. Because poverty is a choice.
But is that feasible?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we can debate that.
If we have the money, if we have the money to send billionaires into space for fun, we have the money to ensure that every single person has food, shelter, and clothes.
You know, I don't think that you're wrong. The problem is that in the current system that we exist in, that's not
absolutely.
reasonably feasibly possible within the next 10 years.
Right,
and if you spend, this is where Jake and I really differ, right? If you spend your entire life, Jake's like, no. If you spend your entire life trying to change this system to get to, let's just say that one goal, right? Just put that out there for example. You're trying to change these systems to do exactly what you just said, which I fundamentally agree with, right? You're not going to do that. You're not going to get there because it's going to be so hard and not feasibly possible to get people and all of the resources needed and change all the people's minds needed to get that to happen within the next 10 years. So why not just do what you do have control of, right? Because the way I look at it is, I don't disagree with you, right? But that is not within my grasp as a person in society right now. What is within my grasp is to study what I'm studying, to try and work in what I want to work in, and to secure the people in the country that I live in.
Yeah. To answer the question, it's because if we don't do it, it will never happen. I'm not claiming that I will even make a minuscule difference at all. And I don't think that I will see the future that I want in my lifetime. But if I don't do it, and if I don't inspire others to do it, then it will never happen. And I would prefer not to live in a world where
you
that
don't at
can
least
never
try.
happen.
Yeah. Jake in 10 years is looking back on this being like, damn.
Well, I mean, I've had these beliefs for a while. I've never been able to, not never, but I wasn't always able to articulate them in the way that I do now, and I'm still not even that good at it. But if we don't try and just complain, it will never get any better. And I can't remember who said it, but there's a quote.
We're gonna
Be
find it.
the change you want to see in the world.
Ah, yes. Mm-hmm. And I think that can apply to, what I'm saying as well. I think...
It was Gandhi. It was
Of course
Gandhi
it was
who
Gandhi.
said,
Yes.
you have to be the change you want to see in the world. And that is at the core of everything that I do. I will never
Not try.
I will never not try, because if I don't try, then who will?
Very well said. Very well said.
I would rather die trying than thrive in a system I disagree with.
Yeah. No, I understand. And I think that's our fundamental difference as people, is I am not, I don't love the system that I'm in, but I also certainly don't hate it. And I also try and have a lot of perspective as far as, like, this is going to be interesting to say right now, but, things could be a lot worse, right?
Well, absolutely.
We could be living in a very, just the fact that you and I are able to sit down as a man and a woman and record a podcast and speak our own thoughts on issues that are directly impacting the world we live in, right? Just that fact alone of, like, we're able to do this and be where we are and talk about what we want to talk about is something that we shouldn't take for granted. But I also do see your point of, like, absolutely, and I support you in it.
Well, like, even to that point of saying, it could be worse. That is true. I will not disagree with the fact that it could be worse. But to have the mindset that just because it could be worse means we can't strive for better, I think is inherently inhuman.
I think we need to keep both in mind, right? I think it's just like anything in life, it's a balance.
Yeah, I've had this conversation recently. I don't think that true balance is the acceptance of opposite opinions.
What would you define true balance as?
Constantly questioning your own correctness and your own beliefs.
What if that makes you go crazy?
Define crazy.
Like, what if, okay, if you're saying you always need to be questioning, if I find, a side of an opinion or a balance between opinions that I feel comfortable in, why should I keep questioning that and going over it over and over? Obviously, if there's new information, hello, foreign policy, update with new information, right? Obviously, but why should I keep questioning it versus working on other ideas and finding balances and middle grounds on other opinions so that I can be a better informed, more well-rounded person?
I think you can do both, but also stagnation leads to death.
When
a fish stops swimming, it dies.
Good thing I'm not a fish.
Well,
no, I understand. I got you.
Stagnation leads to death. Humans are evolutionary. Our whole purpose is to change constantly. There should not be stagnation, and to accept stagnation is to be anti-human, because that's what we are. We are progressive creatures. We evolve. We change. That's the whole point. Our brains are constantly changing. The amount of chemicals and neurotransmitters that are rushing through our brain, constantly causing minuscule changes. That is the essence of humanity.
Just to be clear, I'm not saying that I accept stagnation by saying that I'm not a fish.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying, like,
no,
the idea
I got
is,
you. Yes.
The idea is you can't accept stagnation.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that's the beautiful part of life, is that things aren't the same. So then I have a question for you to wrap things up. I know you're big into this topic, though, so try not take it for the next 10 minutes. But
that's a hard ask.
If you think that we're always changing, right, like you said, a fish that stops swimming dies, why are you a Marxist? If, in my opinion, okay, Karl Marx was a dude.
Yeah.
Right? He tried it. He tried Marxism out. We tried it. He wrote about it a lot. Yeah. Too much, in my opinion. Okay? I don't ever want to see the Marx Engels reader ever again in my life.
Well, just
I took social
Marx.
theory. I did. I don't like it. It hurt my brain. But anyways, my point. Why do you think that we should try it again? If we already tried it, why can't we try something else?
Being a Marxist is not really a I don't know how to say that. It's not a verb type thing.
It's not you saying that you think we should implement Marxism again in the same form.
It's not a dogma. It's a way of thinking. So the idea behind Marxism is that power structures control the way that people behave. That's like one of the core ideas of Marxism. Whoever controls the power structure can influence the way that the culture is going to shape. And that's just true. We see it everywhere. When you're a kid, who do you listen to? Your parents. Because why? They have the authority.
So then what do you call someone like me, who I agree with that, I just don't think it needs to, like, change?
Well, I don't know what you would call that.
What do you think about that?
I think that... Was that a stop or 5 minutes?
5.
Okay. I'll make this quick. I think that acceptance of things is normal because it's a lot of weight to bear. And we have other focuses, and there's other things that are pressing your mind, and that's
where I'm
normal.
at. Yeah.
And not everyone needs to be the revolutionary. I don't believe in, like... I'm not a Marxist-Leninist, so I don't believe in overthrowing... Like,
That's what he wants you to think.
Killing off all the people that disagree with me. But not everyone needs to be a revolutionary thinker. As long as people are engaging in behavior that is at least neutral to progression, they can do whatever they want.
Okay, that's fair. So would you call me neutral to progression?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Good. At least you don't think I'm inhibiting it. Okay, I gotcha. I think we'll wrap it up there. We don't want to take up too much of your time. Jake, any final thoughts?
Tune in next week or next time.
Yes, please. And
we'll have a more structured conversation.
Yeah, we're working on it. And any ideas, any people you want to see, anything you want us to talk about, please, by all means, nothing's off the table. Let us know, tell us, and thank you.
Yes,
thanks
thank you.
guys.